All right, welcome everyone to the October 3rd Board of Selectmen's meeting. The meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be shown on local access television and online. If you would please all stand and join me in the pledge to the flag.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda, we have the Boston Post cane, Miss Catherine Lucini. She's here tonight and joining us. This is given to the most long-living person in town. We used to trying to find the correct terminology. We used to give out a cane. We now keep this cane in-house because it was lost a few times. But this is the cane, and the Historic Commission, I'm not sure who would like to explain what this means and more about the Boston Post cane.
Hi, I'm Chris Newman, member of the Bridgewater Historic Commission, and what we usually do is read you about the post cane history, and I'll also present you with them for yourself. Congratulations. It's wonderful to see so many representatives of your family. I think you took the record for the number of family members that have been here.
Like their old grandmother, that's why.
Well, you're lucky to have so much family nearby. The Boston Post cane history starts in August of 1909, when a Mr. Edwin Rozier, who was publisher of the Boston Post, forwarded to the boards of selectmen in 700 towns in New England a gold-headed ebony cane with a request that it be presented with the compliments of the Boston Post to the oldest living man in town, to be used by him as long as he lives, and at his death handed down to the next eldest man in the town. The cane remained the property of the town and not of the man who received it. The custom, luckily, was expanded to include women in 1930. The canes were all made by J.F. Fradley and Company, a New York manufacturer. The manufacturer used ebony, shipped in 7-foot lengths from the Congo in Africa. They were cut to cane lengths, seasoned for 6 months, churned on lathes to the right thickness, and then coated and polished. Each cane adorned a 14-karat gold head, which was 2 inches long, decorated by hand, and a furrowed tip. The head was personalized for each town and engraved with the inscription presented by the Boston Post to the oldest citizen of West Bridgewater to be transmitted. The Board of Selectmen was to be the trustees of the cane and keep it always in the hands of the oldest citizen. No Connecticut towns are included, and only 2 towns in Vermont are known to have canes. So you see the replica, and it's actually quite beautiful, the wood and the gold, and you see West Bridgewater is on the tip. Isn't it beautiful? So that's what it represents to you now.
All right, thank you very much.
Enjoy your status. Okay.
Would you like to introduce some of your family that surrounds you? Clearly there's many of them.
Sure. I always grandson, but he represents his family. His mother is my daughter. And this is another niece. She came down from Worcester. What is it? Worcester.
Worcester.
Worcester used to be. And 2 of her daughters came with her. And who else is here? No. Oh.
Yes, she is your niece.
And this is another niece, Pauline. She's from Abington. She's headed that out to France. No, she's going to Italy tomorrow morning. But she's a good sport and came here tonight. And this is her daughter. You're not Kayla, right? No, she's not that. And my, of course, my daughter-in-law, you know her, and Bill. He does belong to me, that one there.
Well, she's claiming him in public.
And I really am proud of him.
The rest of the gang is out here.
Yeah.
The room wasn't big enough.
Too many today.
Allison.
And then two nieces, grandnieces are right here, too. And my good friend up back there, Patty. And, you know. My girlfriends are up back, my coffee girlfriends are up back there. Yes. And another one over there. And there's my granddaughter up there, newly engaged. My oldest granddaughter.
You do well remembering
Bill's
everyone.
daughter.
You do well remembering everyone.
Like, so far, so good. And of course, whose side would Bill up there?
Will's up there.
Will's there.
Where's Will? Oh, I boyfriend, Will, yeah. And did you have to come? They made you come? Nope. And, who else is there?
Nisha and Sean.
Oh, I can't, oh, there, yeah, yes, okay. Those are, that's good. Father-in-law to be, well, I guess they're not engaged.
Oh, I don't think so. I'm steering him away from that.
I'll get him in trouble. Did I miss any of my good friends up back there?
I think you got them all.
You got them all.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, yeah. So I guess that's it.
Thank you, welcome everyone, and Eldon has something.
Introduce me.
We have the Boston Post cane, the town of West Bridgewater, I hereby award to Mrs. Catherine Lucini in recognition of holding the honorary position of elderly resident in West Bridgewater, Massachusetts, signed this 3rd day of October 2018, Board of Selectmen, Anthony Kinahan, Eldon F. Marrera, and Denise Reyes. And incidentally, when Catherine came in tonight, she says, I know one person there, I know you, Eldon, so I'm not. But I'd like to welcome all the family, it's a great family here, out here. And of course, Billy, we see a lot of him, and we thank him for all his years. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvin, thank you.
Good luck.
Denise has a pin for you, a West Bridgewater.
So also on behalf of the town, we'd like to give you this honorary pin. And I will say that cane is not nearly as beautiful as you are. Absolutely.
And what is your job?
Oh, I'm a selectman.
You're
I'm the new one. I'm
Oh,
the new one. I hope I have your spot. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna pin this on you and
Thank you very much, good luck, yeah.
thank you.
One last gift for you.
Oh, how nice, thank you. Beautiful.
He's a selectman too.
Oh, very
Oh, boy.
That's beautiful.
See, that's why I didn't bring you flowers today. I knew you had
Those are from all of us.
Yeah.
You know
Well, thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My dad.
I know your dad. How young are you?
Italy tomorrow?
Guys, we know everyone was on breakfast tonight.
Yeah. Don't worry. Yes, and it's really cool. There's a few people, but she recognized them.
Yeah, but at that point, you know, under a little stress.
Under stress. Exactly.
I only brought one?
Did you notice that? I told him to.
There's one thing that I forgot while we were standing. Recently, Charles Johnson, a former selectman, passed away. Eldon, I know that you served with him for many years, or I believe you served for 10 years? Over 10 years?
Right.
So I don't know if you wanted to say.
Well, the only thing I can say about Charlie was very, very great to work with, and of course his wife designed the park down there, and they were both very, very involved in the politics of this town, and he very, very conscientious. And in those days, we got a lot of things done then. And he was the senior selectman, and I certainly learned a lot from him. And I don't know, I'm still here. So he must have taught me pretty good, you know. But yes, I was very fond of Charlie, and I did get a chance a couple of times. I went under with customers of mine up there, and the nurse told me to go over and see Charlie, and Charlie still was very, very sharp when I went in and had conversations with him, and he asked me still a lot of questions about the town, and of course, I always remember, you know, we left the selectmen's meeting, and we didn't just go home. He had to have a scotch, you know. That was his one thing that he liked. But he was great to work with, and he's certainly going to be missed by all of us.
Thanks, Eldon. Okay.
About the senator?
Yes, and also the tragic passing of former Senator Brian Joyce. I don't think he was senator when I was on the board, but I know he was very helpful in the past to West Bridgewater. I would just like to express our condolences for him as well.
He was a very key factor in the getting of the school in the state bond bill there, and every time we called upon him, I know he ended up with a lot of personal problems and all that, but he worked diligently for the town of West Bridgewater, and when I read that in the paper there, like, boy, it was very, very sad, because if all politicians were like him, we wouldn't have any worries, because I'll tell you, he doesn't just, you know, say he's going to call you back. He called you back, and we got things done. And he done a lot for West Bridgewater. So I'm sorry about his passing.
Next, Officer Thaxter, the new school resource officer. We invited in, I believe Eldon asked that he come in to recognize him and ask him for an update how the first few weeks going and all that.
Yeah, I know that he's worked diligently and in a way among the children of West Bridgewater, and we appreciate his efforts. And every once in a while, outstanding people like that we'd like to recognize. I have a certificate today on the 3rd day of October 2018. This certificate of appreciation is awarded to Officer Kenny Thatcher in recognition of your dedicated service to the town of West Bridgewater. Through your years of leadership of the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, and as the town's first school resource officer, the Board of Selectmen would like to recognize you with a certificate. Anthony Kinnan, Eldon F. Marrera, and Denise Reyes there. And how's everything going as resource officer? And
First,
maybe you can say a few things there.
Thank you very
And
much.
Thank you very much
I'm
for
sorry,
your.
Everything's going great. I'd like to say thanks to Chief Flaherty for coming tonight. It was he was busy doing the Citizens Police Academy. Made it a point to come over. Things have been going great at the school. The school was very open to having us there. The chief has been awesome about, you know, getting things done and getting security in line. And I think we're very pleased with the way they've taken us in over the first 2 months, and just looking forward to having it get better and better.
That's very good, and because like you say, we really appreciate what you do for the children of this town, and especially with all the things that are going on in the world today there, I don't think you can have enough protection.
No, thank you.
Thank you again.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just say one thing too on that score. Officer Thaxter, Kenny just does a phenomenally great job with the DARE program. That's really why we're here.
Well, thank you.
And I can tell you, I go every single year in May when he does his graduation. There's a couple of hundred students in the room. And you know, students are funny, right? Because they have to go to class and they have to follow orders and all that stuff. But when you go there, you really feel the spirit in the room that the kids are really engaged. They're participants. They're not just sitting there saying, hey, yay, I'm not in class today. They're really engaged. He does a really nice job of having some of the, you do those videos where they act out as to whether it's bullying or whether it has to do with drugs and alcohol abuse. And it is noticeable on their face and their body language how much value they get out of it, which only makes a better town in the long run. So it's not like Kenny is just going through the motions. You watch these kids, it really resonates with them, and I think that, like I said, I think the town's so much better off. And seriously, you do a great job, Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon, appreciate it.
Can I say one thing too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I echo exactly what David said, but what's really made, where we are today is because of Officer Savignano started the program and Ken Thaxter took it over. And what it did is it built the relationships we have with our kids and with the schools. I don't think we'd be here today and doing the fine job he's doing without building this rapport with all our kids in the schools. And I think, that alone is, given us a massive amount of safety, just knowing that they can come to us and come to Officer Thaxter. So I think that's a huge, huge thing that he's done.
Thanks, Chief.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, folks, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a revocation hearing for Auto Drive 1, 181 South Main Street. They have abandoned the building, I believe, a few months ago. Tracy, I believe they haven't responded to any letters or anything?
Yeah, we've had a difficult time getting in touch with them because they've abandoned the location. We've tried to call, email, just complete non-responsiveness. So I think abandoned is a good term.
And so, Mr. Chairman, this is not an established hearing per any Massachusetts general law. It is a hearing just to inform them that you're going to take action. They've been contacted. They haven't been here. But with that said, I would still ask you to open the hearing and still close the hearing, please.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to open the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is there a motion to revoke the license?
Motion to revoke the Class 2 license of 181 South Main Street Incorporated.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have another hearing for Narragansett Lounge, 3 South Main Street.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is posted for 7:30. So again, it's not required to have a newspaper notice, but it is a hearing. So I would ask that we wait until 7:30 in case there's other participants that would like to be involved.
Okay, no problem. I'll move down to Ms. Anatelli, the campaign and observing at the polling location policy.
I think you all have a copy of it. I just wanted to get a policy in place. It's always been a standing policy by practice, but there's never been anything in writing as far as the campaigning at the polls. So I felt that I needed to get something in writing so that we'd have a little more force behind the reasons we do the things we do. So I'm asking for you guys to look it over and to approve it either tonight or at the next meeting, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to either approve it or to accept for review and vote on it at the next meeting?
think we should accept the review and vote on it, because I haven't really gone through it. I know this has been kind of a problem for years out there.
Yeah, it was,
And I know that it's
a
a
lot
good
of
idea
problem
to
the
do it.
last election.
I don't really have any
primary, yeah.
problem with it, but just give us a little chance to read through it
Yeah.
and put it on the next agenda. Is that,
Yep, it'd be great, because the next election is November 6th, so if we have it coming, if we get approved maybe at the next meeting, then it'll be in place for that election.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
aye.
Okay, we'll vote on it next week, or in 2 weeks. And the state primary warrant for signatures.
Just need that signed so I can post that.
Do you have that with you, or have you already, do we?
I gave it to Lorna, she
Okay.
has it.
Okay, we'll sign it after the meeting.
Okay, yeah.
A motion to sign it? Sure.
Sure, is there a
I'll
second?
make a motion.
Second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and update on early voting.
I just wanted to let you know that with this election, there is early voting, and that it begins on October 22nd, and that it will be running through November 2nd, and we will be having, most of it will be done during regular business hours, but we will also be adding a Saturday, October 29th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. as an option for them to come in and early vote.
Is that state mandated?
To have it on a Saturday?
To do the early voting,
Yes,
is
it
it?
is,
Oh,
yes,
it's
it is.
mandated.
It's for state elections, not primaries, not local elections, just state elections.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions?
I was just reading this quickly. I didn't, anyone can,
Any registered voter can vote early. They don't have to have an excuse for not being able to make it to the polls. They can come in at any time and vote early, so they don't have to go on election day.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Annie.
We have a one-day entertainment license and transient vendor application for Berwick Boys on October 14th. I believe they do this annually.
Yeah.
We typically waive the fee for them.
Yeah.
Is there,
Motion to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Site plan review for 280 South Main Street. This was Wicker World, I believe it was called, or a wicker furniture company. David, do you know exactly what they're planning on doing in there?
Yeah, they're not exactly sure yet. What they're looking to do is to probably carve up the inside and turn it into multiple tenants for commercial use, most likely for office space use. So they're working through that process now. I spoke to the chairman of the planning board yesterday. So all they want to meet with the applicant because they want to get a better understanding of exactly what he's looking to do. Quite frankly, it's an allowed use because it's in the business zone. It already undergone site plan review before. If they're just going to have a couple of tenants inside, there may not even be a need for full site plan. But without having all that knowledge yet, they want to be able to interview them and go forward on it. So really, the only real concern really maybe potentially would be parking, depending on how many different commercial entities would go inside.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or anything they'd like to pass on to the planning board as concerns?
I have none.
Just looking at this quickly, there's a residential tenant. Is that an apartment upstairs in that building?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I thought. Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, so, I'll entertain a motion to pass on to the planning board with the only comment being the potential of limited parking. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved meeting minutes of August 15th and September 5th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And accept for review meeting minutes of September 19th, 2018. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. vacation carryover request. David, how many days is this?
This is a request for 5 days. Per their collective bargaining agreement, they can carry up to 5 days with the approval of their superintendent and subsequently approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Does anyone have any concerns with that, or is there a motion to approve that request?
Make a motion to approve the request for carryover vacation.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bylaw Study Committee. So last meeting, we had voted to reestablish the Bylaw Study Committee, and 2 of the positions or openings are at large. They are just residents. The other 5 are ex officio based on their position. And David, could you, or I know Mr. Cream in front of us has submitted an application. I believe he's the only, are there any other?
We received one in late, but what I think that we should do is probably reach out to him, ask him to come in for the next meeting, because I know the board normally likes to interview
Yes.
the individuals first.
Okay.
Mr. Cream is here, so obviously he can do some type of interview, and then if you're so inclined, make the appointment.
Okay, Mr. Cream has been to many of our meetings the past couple of years. I think it'd be a great fit for the committee, but if you want just a minute, briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. Jonathan Cream. I live at 96 South Elm Street. This is the blue house on the corner as you're going to the dump of River Street. So you all go by my house at least once a week. I've lived there for just shy of 19 years now, and only recently decided to sort of get involved and pay attention to what was going on around town. I come from a family of attorneys, although I'm not one myself. My family's law office has practiced in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 86 years, 3 generations. So that's sort of where my background comes from, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Cream, or any questions?
Motion to- Bring him on.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
volunteering.
Thanks for volunteering, John.
Okay, it now being 7:30, we'll move back to Narragansett Lounge. Tracy, could I ask you to just briefly summarize the issue, or not even the issue, just what the process?
Sure, in the same vein as the first hearing, if you could just open.
We have to open the hearing?
Motion, is there a motion to open the hearing?
Motion.
Yeah,
Motion
Second.
to open the hearing.
okay,
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So at a previous meeting, we had discussed a potential violation that was brought forward by the liquor agent. And this hearing was scheduled to discuss potential penalties or action on the license. We did receive a request in from Mr. Karam, who has joined this evening, asking for an extension. So if you would like to speak to that directly.
Yes, as I wrote last week in my letter, I'm asking for continuance of this hearing for 30 days. Since a decision by this board could have such a significant impact on my business, I believe it is in my best interest to seek legal advice. I apologize for the delay, but will be able to come back to the board in 30 days fully prepared. Thanks.
Okay. Does anyone have any concern with granting a continuance?
I don't.
Well, I have a concern with 30 days. I'd like to move this along as expeditiously as possible. And it was announced at our last meeting that the intention was to have the hearing now. So there already was 2 weeks. So can't we address this at our next meeting? Could you be prepared in 2 weeks to address this?
My lawyer is out of town, out of state, medical emergency situation. So I gotta wait till he come back.
I mean, I think I agree with you. I think 2 weeks probably would be sufficient. I would say the reason I'd be inclined to grant the 30 days would be if this were to ever escalate, I would want to be able to, if it were to be appealed, if whatever decision we make, I'd want to be able to tell a judge that we made every reasonable accommodation, and I think that I wouldn't want a judge to tell us that we were unreasonable with accommodating his needs, and that be a reason for the town to be found as making the incorrect or the wrong decision.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think 2 weeks is more than appropriate. However, if his attorney is out on a serious medical leave, then clearly he's not going to have the time to afford to you what you need. So I'm okay with 30 days.
Okay.
I'm the same way. Like I said, I'd like to, move this thing but if he wants that, similar things, whether it's a club or not there, I'd like to give, the people before us, when the problems come up, much time as we can, But I said here, we'd like to move it as soon as we can, so get working on it there. I have no problem with those periods of 30 days.
So do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, a motion to continue it.
I'll make the motion, give it 30 days.
What's the date, David?
Yep, I was gonna say, I just looked it up. Your 30 days brings you to, your next meeting would be November 7th. So I'd ask your motion then to continue it to November 7th. Do we have anything, as you're aware, at 7 PM that evening? Should I say 7:15 just to be?
We do.
Say-
We have a license hearing, so I would say, can we say 7:30? I'm not
Okay.
sure if it's 7 or 7:15 off the top of
All
my
right, so I would,
Add that to my motion.
so I would ask it to be continued to November 7th
7:30.
at 7:30 PM.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and we are not closing the hearing, correct? Because
That
it's
is-
being
No.
continued?
That is correct.
Continue the
Okay.
hearing.
All right.
Motion to continue the hearing.
All set. All right, Historical Commission, I guess we'll wait on that. We'll go down to J, alcohol policy. So a few weeks ago, or maybe even more than that, the police chief, the liquor license agent, Sergeant Warner, Assistant Town Administrator Aldrich, and myself all met to discuss the current alcohol policy. We were all in agreement that we needed to make changes. We needed a better policy that we were more comfortable with following. In the past, we really hadn't stuck to everything that was outlined in the policy. So what we've tried to do is develop a policy that we're more comfortable with, that makes more sense, and that we'll better follow. So it's here for you to review. I don't know if Tracy, you wanted to add anything to that?
Nope, I think that the only thing I would add is I think we tried to capture just sort of fine-tuning the escalating process that would be involved in the event of multiple incidents of non-compliance, so.
Okay. So I guess right now, we wouldn't want to make a decision on it tonight. It's a lot to review. So I'd ask that we take this under review and over the next 2 weeks, review it, make any comments, and then we'll come back for a vote with if there's any changes or anything in 2 weeks. So is there a motion for that or any questions?
I'll make a motion to accept the alcohol policy for review.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving down to public comment period. Is there anything from the public? Any comments? No? Nice.
Oh, Anthony, I think I said the wrong date on that Saturday. I think it's October 27th, not October 29th for early voting.
Okay, yeah, that would be October 27th is Saturday.
27th, yeah. For some reason, I keep getting the 29th stuck in my head, but.
All right. Thank you.
I know nobody's got any comments out there. I got a comment. It was a pleasure last night. We went to a fundraiser for a candidate that's running for public office, and And then there was a gentleman there, and I don't know if you're familiar with Crescent Street. There's a contractor's yard up there, and he is a newly owner, and he asked me to come by. They have completely cleaned that yard up, and I mean, that's been a mess. And that's been an eyesore for years up the upper Crescent Street. And I asked him what he was going to do. Basically, keep it as a contractor's yard. But I haven't gone by it, but it's a pleasure, and it's certainly going to be a pleasure for the people. And you have to, go through it, and people live up in that street. So that, according to him, has been cleaned up. And I thanked him, really. Somebody comes in and with good intentions, and it's gone all through, I guess, these things, as far as, I guess, it was a Section E, they had it, I did a lot of perking in there and everything else, so I don't know if he's got anything else in his mind. For now, it's gonna stay a contractor's yard. So anybody curious of what's going on up there, that's what I know.
Thank you for the update, Eldon. Okay. Is all of the historic commission here? Everybody? Okay.
Yes.
All right, we'll go to that then. So the historic commission would like to honor the late Jim Benson. And I don't know if you'd like to start with what you'd like to do.
I'm Bob Beavis, current chairman of the commission, replacing, I'll never replace Jim, but we need someone to lead the workers, so to speak. We've had not a real busy year since April, when Jim passed, but we've had some 20 open houses, not a lot of people. They can't seem to find us. Even with the sign out front that says it's hard to find especially if they don't know where the fire barn is or was. And so I want to start the ball rolling about getting a sign out from the street or some way to get recognition for the museum. And then ultimately next spring to have something to honor Jim. It'll be a year after his passing. Originally, as I just started it off, we'd like a town museum with an arrow, the blue sign with white lettering. We thought it would be nice to be over here with a driveway that goes straight into the museum, but it is a fire, as it's been brought to my attention, is the fire department access. And that probably wouldn't be the best of ways, perhaps. But we want to do is get some kind of signage for by next spring that would direct people in and over to the building. And part of honoring for Jim, instead of having just a little sign at the front of the building, maybe more of the colonial style. I'm thinking big. Nice big one with the carved lettering with gold that says Town Museum and whatever else we need to put up there, so when someone comes by, it's not the white building with a little sign below the window. And or when they drive into here, it's like, how do I get into that building? Because of course the door faces the street, not the side. So this past year we have been able to get some window coverings inside to block out UV rays and the sun, which can be damaging to things, and we're going to put things away for the winter. We have a storage office up here in the town hall, and we have a lot of sorting. Jim had a lot of boxes that weren't opened in some time, so we have a winter project there. Basically, the reason I asked to get on the agenda was primarily we need a selectman's approval for a street sign or a signage, and maybe we'll need some more. Somebody has any suggestions whether we go to obviously a different location if that's not going to be acceptable, and then how we might do it.
Yeah, so what about more towards the gazebo side to point people through the parking lot, and then another one back here to designate either where there's parking or another directional sign somewhere pointing towards the building. But I'd say the one on the street, I would think that maybe by the gazebo would make the most sense.
Well, either the gazebo or this corner of the,
That corner, yeah.
right here, then they'd come right down by the side of the building and one at the backstop, so to speak, and come over. But what I'll do is our next meeting or meetings, when we have a full group of our members, we can discuss different options. Like I said, I just wanted to get the ball rolling, so I threw the ball out, and we all kind of talked about it, but
What about a naming of the museum to the Benson Museum or something like that?
Well, that's be part of the 2019 celebration that we'd be planning. Definitely would, something that we would, I think, embrace, but here again, I'm all for acting within the meeting laws of all of us getting together to talk about it, and the selection of wording and signage and whatever, and who we can send the bill to do it.
Yeah, I didn't, did you speak with the fire chief about it being a fire access way or however it's referred to?
I did. So, he and I both had concerns, and Bob and I spoke, but we had concerns where it's a fire lane that we probably can't, we don't want to encourage people driving there because it is a fire lane. But we still want to make sure that we honor Jim, and at the same time, we want to make sure that people know where the museum is. So I think it's a matter that although we can't really use that location, I think it's really a good idea in spirit that we do both things.
Okay, that's the question I had. The status of with the road, but what we can do, what we can't do on the road there,
So if I'm hearing you, Bob, I think what you're saying is that some of the ideas that we discussed earlier and maybe discussed with a couple of your is it you want to have a historical commission meeting and have it, bring it to your full committee?
Walk the walk, so to speak. Should it be way over there? Should it be here? Will the sign get lost down here in the ball field, or I can't. I guess I'm one of kind of hands-on. Want to walk it, see it, take a look at it, see what's going on, and we might say, hey, out there was not bad. They'd be able to come in. But on the other hand, we might say, no, we want something closer to do it. Because it shares the same address as the town hall. Technically. We get some mail that way.
You might find you have more visitors. They may be trying to get to town hall and end up at the museum.
Well,
If they don't have to go around the building.
That's the problem. They can't see it.
yeah, we've tried opening on Saturdays.
When everything was going on here.
Wednesdays from 4 to 7 because the town hall is open to 7. We tried Monday to, we've tried different days, different circumstances. Opening day of Little League Baseball. 1,000 people over there.
Right.
4 of us in the building, and we were all members of the commission. Never came over.
No, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's certainly deserve an idea, Why do they have all you people here? I'd like to change the subject. Every once in a while, people approach me. I got a climber home now. I got another book home, which I will get to you. And there's another lady that keeps on promising me, and I haven't got them yet, but she claims she's got some real good pictures of the fire, of the Howard School. And as soon as I got, in fact, I told the fire chief about there. He says, well, you're going to have to press her if she's got them, and it'd be nice to get them, to the museum there. Something like that there, so next time I see her, I'll say, hey, I'll follow you home. I want those pictures. Oh, boy.
What are the hours of the museum again? When are you open?
Well, we varied them.
Okay.
Like 4 to 7, like on a Wednesday, 10 to 1 on a Saturday. Try to get people, and what else did we have? We were even holding our meetings like on a Monday
Yeah.
We'd be open from 4 to 7, and we'd start our meeting at 5, figuring about 2 hours, so we would have a meeting, trying to keep our time active.
Is it posted somewhere where we can see when the museum is open?
It has been of late. In the beginning, probably not. We did get a,
On the hub, I think we put
On
it
the hub?
on. The hub, and then we
Hub?
put it in
it's on the hub, yeah. We have a,
the senior center newsletter.
Okay.
yeah.
Bob, you should also send it to my office. I can put it on the calendar in the town
Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make it there.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Yeah, 'cause they keep changing. Next year we might do different times. But it's getting too cold out here to sit, so we're not opening the rest of the year.
yeah, putting stuff in storage for the winter, checking our inventory, and we'll be rebooting next spring.
Sounds good, thank you.
Between that time, we'll be looking for signage ideas and to get the sign ready for when the frost lifts.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you all for coming in. It sounds like there's a consensus here. We're all
On the same page.
on the same page. We want to honor Jim Benson, and I think it sounds like we're all in support of a big sign or naming the museum after him, something along those lines. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for seeing us.
I'm off to life there.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, everybody is here from the committees for our 8 o'clock appointment, if you would like to pull that forward.
their meeting's not posted until 8.
Ah, you're absolutely right. Okay, you're absolutely right.
So, David, you have 12 minutes for your town administrator?
I'll try not even to use all of them, but basically just a bunch of updates to the board. One is that, as you know, we now have a bylaw study committee. And so as part of the process, as people propose bylaws to our office, I will present them to the board. That way the board is aware of it, and then from there, we will present it to the bylaw study committee. So as of right now, we have one for storage of trailer bylaw. You'll recall Mr. Olson was here over the summer, and we also received in a wind turbine bylaw as well from Mr. Hobbs. So both of them we will present over to the bylaw study committee. Next update is in reference to the Memorial Plaques Restoration Project. It received funding from town meeting last October. The project is now complete, and we have placed some pictures for you up on the screen. The gentleman that we used just does a phenomenal, great job. You could see on the left what it looked like, and on the right, they look brand new. And so we were able to restore a total of 9 plaques, all dedicated to people who served for the town of West Bridgewater and gave the ultimate sacrifice in the past. We also took the large stone that was in front of the town hall, we lifted it, brought it over, and we also redid that plaque. So we have a nice tribute to all the West Bridgewater residents now that served the town. And so, again, just an update to the board that project is complete. Near completion is our East Street, East Center Street project. We started that just a couple of months ago. Quite frankly, they did a phenomenal job. We received very few complaints. They have now, at this point, they consider themselves substantially complete. They have repaved the road. We've done all of the infrastructure work that we can do. The only thing that we're waiting on are the lights that's going to go in. So obviously, it takes about 6 months or so. That's why we had to wait. We received funding in June. We ordered them right away. It takes about 6 months for that infrastructure to come in. But in the meantime, they've done all the road work that they possibly can do. The sidewalk is in that now connects that intersection down to the apartments at Riverbend. And so the infrastructure for the lights have been installed, which means that when they come in, all we have to do is fasten them. So they've had all this time to cure during the warmer months of the season. So it'll be pretty short and simple and easy once they come in. And again, at this point, we're under budget. 2 FYIs to the board in reference to youth football and to an Eagle Scout project. They are both going to be using town facilities, so I signed off on it per the policy. And the next one is in reference to net school spending. We're required on an annual basis to provide the school committee as to what the full contribution from the town side is, as to what the town pays for school resource for school resources. This passed as in 1993 as part of the Education Reform Act. There's a formula, quite frankly, it's pretty archaic, not simple and easy to follow, but you'll see in this one-page summary that from the operating budget side is that the town total spend is about $14,866,170. That's about a 4% increase year over year. And then from there are transportation costs, debt services, the regional school, and that brings all of our expenditures to $18,562,044, up about 5% year over year. Again, the bulk of the increase, though, is due to the debt service because we had our last bond payment for the construction of the middle school, senior high school. The formula is that you take our operating expenses, which you can see again is $14,866,170. The state constitution requires that we meet our foundation level spending, which the state has determined to be $11,516,998. That means that we spent about $3.3 million more than we're normally required by state law. And again, that's pretty consistent. You will see that most municipalities that support their school system, that's a fairly consistent difference. I think it also highlights the fact that there's no doubt that this Education Reform Act that's now 25 years old, the formula is broken. It really, truly is. So there's been now, for 4 years, there was a commission appointed to study it, tweak it, but there hasn't been a lot of political will to change it. Your second page I provided to you in your packet just shows you from the State Board of Education as to some of how they determine what the formula is. And again, you'll see on number 8, which really is the key, is that 11,516,998 is the number that they determined that we must spend at a bare minimum. And basically the difference, it's not exact, but the difference between number 10, which is target local contribution, which is 7.6 million, that's basically what it's saying is that our taxes, we should levy about $7.6 million at a minimum in order to meet it, because the difference is made up by state aid, which is about $3.6 million. So I'll be sending this off to the school committee. They then have to file it with the Massachusetts Board of Education. Next on the agenda is update on municipal aggregation. As we discussed at our last meeting, is that we are now going to be contracted for 3 years, which will be about 2.5 cents less than what the national grid rate will be for starting on November 1st. For people who had already participated in the program in the past, they don't have to do anything. They're automatically enrolled. Even though we changed vendors and changed contracts, there's nothing on their end they have to do. For those people who opted out last year, same thing. They don't have to do anything. They're not in the program. They're going to remain out. For the people who did opt out of the program, if they want to be able to opt in, we are going to have a public service announcement. It will be released on Monday. The only reason for the delay is I need to get a phone number from Direct Energy, and they don't actually have their staff set up for us yet. But anyway, we have the bulk of the PSA written, and so we'll release that, and we'll put that on our website. We'll link it to our Facebook page as well. This, as you can see, as to what it is currently. It will let people know what they will do or what they don't have to do. It will provide phone numbers to our vendor. It will also provide phone numbers directly to Direct Energy. In addition to that, yesterday I met with the president and owner of Colonial Power, and we shot about a 13-minute video where we went into great detail as to what people can do to opt in or opt out. We also informed the public the National Grid goes out to bid twice a year. And so in May, it is likely, not exactly perfect, but it's likely that their rate may be a little bit lower than the aggregated rate. And as a result, if they want to be able to opt out in the spring, they can do that and then opt back in next fall. They would have that flexibility. They have the ability to be able to play that, if you will. And that is no fee. There's no other requirements except for going on their website, which takes about 3 minutes, or making a phone call. And again, that video, once it is finally edited, will be out there on the website and on our webpage as well. Last one is in reference to our MS4 permit. This is a municipal stormwater permit that unfortunately has become much more complex with the EPA. It used to be that we just inform them as to what our best practices are, and now at this point they're going to start holding us accountable as to what we are doing to comply with our stormwater requirements. It takes a lot of work. There's a handful of us that work on it for the bulk of the summer. Our conservation agent right now is our MS4 coordinator, places it all together. I review it and sign it. We're required by October 1st to send it off to the EPA, and we're also required to send it off to Mass DEP. Both of them have been sent over. Again, it's just an FYI to the board that we have complied with both state and federal law and did what it is that we had to do. I will have Mr. Delano at one of our future meetings because unfortunately under the new EPA requirements, it's going to cost us time, it's going to cost us money, it's going to require additional staff. Meredith, you'll recall that you were at a meeting where they went over it, and there was a lot of smaller towns like our size that complained to the EPA that it's just not something that we can financially afford. And I think, Meredith, you will agree with me that they didn't really care, did they?
Someone asked that specific question, and yeah, they don't care.
Yep. So at the end of the day, we have to comply. So right now, we are in compliance. We have submitted all the paperwork. We've done the bare minimum necessary requirements. However, under this new EPA requirement, we're going to have to incur additional expense, and we're also going to have to start actually complying physically as opposed to just in writing. So he will be here at a future date, and he'll go over all of those new requirements. And that's my report.
Okay.
Did I make 12 minutes?
Go ahead. We have 2 minutes to kill.
In 2 minutes? Okay, in 2 minutes. David, on the net school spending report.
Yep.
The, just so I follow the numbers right, the $11.5 million number is the minimum the state says we should be spending
That is correct.
towards our schools.
Yes.
And we are contributing from our tax levy, 7.5 million?
No, I didn't do that calculation. What,
Okay.
we would be contributing much more than that, and let's get to it. You will see that on, our net school spending from our operational budget is $14,866,170.
Mm-hmm.
We know our state aid is about $3.6 million. So if we were to subtract that number, that means that we're probably contributing somewhere about $11.2 million from the town side. Now, obviously, not all of that is just from the tax levy, because we also have receipts, motor vehicle excise tax, like, for example. But from the town side, we are contributing about $11.1 million towards the operational side, and the difference is being made up in state aid funding. Below that, you will see that there's a debt service, and which takes up the bulk of that below-the-line spending. That's obviously debt exclusion, that's above and beyond, and that is entirely paid from the tax levy.
Okay. So in the $18 million number, does that include benefits, insurance?
Yes.
It does, okay.
Anything else?
Oh, I did, I'm sorry. How many times can you opt in and opt out of the electrical aggregate?
Well, it's a 3-year contract. Realistically, probably 6 times because it switches, but if you want to do it every month, nobody's going to stop you.
I was just curious because some folks might want to opt in
No, but
and opt out based on winter and summer rates.
they should. I mean, that's exactly what we've educated people in our video yesterday.
Okay.
It's exactly what I would advocate for people. I mean, you have to pay attention. We are actually, under this slide, we are making it as transparent as possible to inform people as to what the national grid rate is and what our rate is. We will continue to do so going forward. But the spirit of your question is, can you opt out every 6 months, depending on which program is most advantageous? The answer is yes, and there is no fee.
Okay. So I blocked my account. So I suppose what I need to do is unblock my account and then opt in?
I don't know about, because you blocked it with National Grid, I presume.
Right.
So I don't know National Grid's internal policy. You might want to touch base with them first.
Okay.
But whether you do or you don't, the answer is yes, you would want to opt in. You would just go to the website, click on the button, you will opt in.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We're now at 8 o'clock, so we'll start the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Committee to appoint the Finance Committee. David, you had received a opinion letter from Town Council. Would you like to briefly summarize that?
Sure. So the reason I contacted town council is because unfortunately, we have a procedural issue or procedural process at this point. Our bylaw states that in order for our finance committee to be appointed, they must be appointed by a subcommittee. That subcommittee must be appointed by the moderator. The bylaw states that we must appoint the subcommittee within 60 days of town meeting. It's absent whether that's prior to town meeting or post-town meeting, so it's open to interpretation. That's a concern. But our subcommittee met in March and was appointed in March, and therefore was not appointed within the 60-day policy. That means we're not complying with the bylaw. The issue then is that we only have 7 members on our finance committee, and the only way, if we want to be compliant with the bylaw, is that we need to have a moderator, because there's no other way to fill it, is that we need to have a moderator in order to be able to appoint those other 2 positions. The only caveat to that is that our current bylaw allows some flexibility that if a vacancy exists, that a joint committee between the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen can make an appointment. But from legal counsel's interpretation of vacancy, they're saying that a vacancy is after an original appointment is made and that person steps down or leaves or whatever happens, then that creates a vacancy at that point. The very fact is that if we were to have the joint finance committee and the selectmen just make original appointments, it thwart the whole bylaw. And as a result, that's why it's not the very definition of a vacancy. So obviously we don't have a moderator. So the way we would correct this is that we would have to call for an election for a moderator. The Board of Selectmen is the only entity that can do that. It'd be a 60-day notice period to the town. That's problematic at this point because that means that you would have to have an election sometime during the holiday season. There's also an expense involved. The town clerk is here. Her and I consulted about this. She spent almost $6,000 at the last election. Be about another $6,000 expense. Assuming that we had a town moderator, we would then at that point have to go and call a special town meeting. And the purpose of that is because we would then have to empower the town moderator to be able to act outside of the 60-day window. Because obviously we're not within 60 days of our annual town meeting. And then remember that once we do all that, the town moderator only sits for 4 months because you could have another election in April of which that person would have to run again. That's basically what his letter says, is that we have a whole bunch of problems at this point. And so he's advising us that we take a little bit of a pragmatic approach, is that we need a finance committee. The finance committee is currently made up of 7 members, all of which are willing to continue to serve. And so is to continue to have the existing finance committee in place. And then next year next year at our annual town meeting is to propose some bylaw at town meeting that answers some of our questions. What does the 60-day rule mean? What does an actual vacancy mean? I'm actually proposing that we add language that says that it has to be a town resident, because right now it doesn't actually say that. So I think that there's some tweaks that we have to make to this bylaw, and we have some time to do it. But from a real pragmatic approach, the subcommittee has reached out to our office and has said, what do we do? And we're looking to try to answer that. And since they were appointed outside of the window, town council's recommendation is that there is no legal requirement for a subcommittee. If you want to go through and call a special election, special town meeting, you can do that. But absent that, his recommendation is to allow the finance committee to do their job, and between now and next annual town meeting, to revisit this bylaw and make it where it's workable. And a last recommendation is that we should do something with this bylaw that is not always contingent on just one person. Because quite frankly, that is what the concern is right now, is that absent a moderator, we can't act. And we really shouldn't put the town in a position where one person or one position kind of holds us hostage from being able to go forward. And unfortunately, whether it's 3 years from now or 30 years from now or 100 years from now, we may potentially run into this issue again. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to visit the bylaw and potentially make some changes that puts the town in a better position going forward. We've asked the subcommittee to be here. We've asked the finance committee to be here. We've asked the town clerk to be here, because I think that they all have to be a participant to this conversation as we work through it over the next handful of months.
Can I speak to that? Thank you. I'm Meredith Anderson. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee. And over the past year, all of us members have discussed the current situation and different ideas on ways of correcting it. One of the issues that we're currently having is we only have 7 members at the moment, and it's a 9-position board. So there have been several occasions where we've had a problem obtaining a quorum. So one of the other pieces of this bylaw that I would like to see discussed is changing the positions from 9 to 7.
Could I ask a question? If you only have 7 members, what is your quorum?
We still have to meet 5.
It's still 5.
It's still 5 because there could have
Because
been
it's a
9.
9-member board.
Even if they only have 7, it doesn't go down.
Correct.
I'd agree with that. I mean, from my time on the finance committee, I thought 9 was a lot. I mean, it's always good to get a lot of opinions, but it was kind of to the point where it was too many, that it was just a little bit chaotic at times. I think 7 seems like more of an appropriate number.
I think democracy is very messy and it isn't very efficient, but it is inclusive. I certainly appreciate that problem, and it would have been a lot easier if a quorum for a 7-member committee were now 4 instead of 5. That's a difficulty. I do think that in terms of changing it, I'd really like to see 9 if possible. I think there are many people in town with various backgrounds who have different things to contribute, whether it's somebody in construction or just so many things come up, that any area of expertise is welcome. But for the time being, I am certainly in agreement with and sympathetic to the issues at hand, and would like to see this committee continue legally and appropriately.
So, Annie, how many registered voters are there in West Bridgewater? You must know.
I have no idea. No, there's 49 something.
Okay. So think about the size of the town, and you're trying to draw 9 people on the current population, and that's the issue. The issue isn't that we're trying to squash democracy. The issue is that we can't field the finance committee because people are busy, and they're just not the volunteer level. It's a big commitment from January to June. So we can't field 9 people. So we've been trying for several years to field 9 people, and we haven't been able to. So I think at some point you have to look hard at what we're able to do and work with the reality and realize that we're not stepping on democracy. We're working with what we have.
Certainly. I would ask that perhaps between now and the time a new bylaw is written, that perhaps a different method of outreach to people at town, who attend town meetings, special or whatever, and if there isn't enough interest, then...
I mean, look how many people go to town meeting when there isn't some huge issue. You're lucky to get 100.
But
And that's a once-a-year occurrence.
Ms. Morse?
Yes, if you had someone that was interested in being on the finance committee at this point, or in a few weeks, would the selectmen be appointing a person?
That's the issue. That's where the vacancy, what's the definition of a vacancy? That's the issue that town council had, is he doesn't see that as being a vacancy that the selectmen jointly with the current finance committee could appoint. The bylaw says if there's a vacancy that the selectmen jointly with the current finance committee, correct, would make an appointment for that vacancy. But the issue is, what's a vacancy? And he doesn't see that as being the definition of a vacancy because it's been long-standing, I guess, and due to someone leaving a year ago and not.
You have a 9-member board, supposed to have a 9-member board in place.
Yep.
And if there's only 7 and someone wants to be on the committee, why can that person not be appointed by the selectmen?
So if I may, that the reason being, Nancy, and this, I spoke ad nauseum to town council about this,
Sure.
is that the spirit of the bylaw is to allow the subcommittee to make a primary appointment. You are making the appointment. The only reason the joint committee between the finance committee and the selectmen get involved is because the appointment that you made, excuse me, the appointment that you made doesn't fulfill that term. And that then becomes a vacancy.
Okay.
However, if the joint committee got together and said, filling them, let's assume that they just decide to hold a meeting the day before you, and said, that's a vacancy, and you guys are supposed to have primary appointment power. So that's why what his definition of a vacancy is that they can only appoint someone that is after you've appointed that person and that person is no longer able to fulfill the seat. So where we have two openings that were not filled by the subcommittee, we cannot fill them following our bylaw.
I'd also like to point out that not all of the members are currently within or have been appointed in their terms. So this isn't a new issue to suddenly come up. I know Jim was fantastic. He was great to work with. He was very nice to me. He and I seemed to work well enough together. And I know over the past couple of years there have been several times where we've been somehow missing each other, where people have applied or have shown interest and somehow has got lost in the shuffle. So I know that there has been a long-standing problem with getting the applicants all the way through the process and onto the board. So that's not to put anyone down in any way. I'm just making that mention that this isn't a new problem to suddenly come up with the passing of the moderator.
I think that in the past, and this seemed to work pretty well, the appointment of the committee to appoint a finance committee was made very shortly after the annual town meeting. It wouldn't make a whole bunch of sense to appoint people to this committee in April, because new finance committee members will be coming in at the very end of all the discussions. So in the past, what happened often was that after town meeting, or in the month or so after that, the committee was appointed and then met either in August or at the beginning of September when vacations were over. And during that time, the moderator solicited applicants and provided the resumes. So in that sort of a timeline, it would be an appointment made or reappointments in September or so. And then, as Mr. Gagnon mentioned, if someone were unable to fill the term, then it would fall upon the selectmen and the remaining members. But I think the timing going forward should be spelled out and adhered to, that, you know, it be done in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Mo, did you have?
I did. What would the mechanism be, probably, David, the question, to keep it at 7?
Yeah, so the only way we would be able to do it is you have to do it through a bylaw at town meeting. So that's why I'm proposing that over the next handful of months is that all of us working together is to come up with a bylaw that we present at town meeting. If there is more people have the inclination of 7 versus 9, we would go to town meeting with it being 7. If others would want to oppose it at town meeting to amend it to 9, they could do that. And then there would be a vote at town meeting, and then obviously majority would rule.
So, can I just say, I've been on, I think, for about 3 years now, and I don't think that we've ever had 9 in the time that I've been on. And even at one point, I think we struggled to keep 5. So it is a challenge to get, you know, folks to be able to meet the commitment, and you know, it's a big commitment. And I think, you know, that speaks to the fact that we might want to consider maybe making it 7, just because of the challenge of even getting 7.
So it's not fair to you folks to keep it at 9 if you can't get 9.
Yeah.
But I'd love dearly to see
I
if we can
understand.
find 9 dedicated people.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I would say is that, you know, a committee to appoint a committee seems a little bit administratively complex to me. And I'm not sure if there's I'm not sure if there's a better, you know, approach to doing that, where you have to have a moderator and then you have to appoint a committee and then they appoint a committee. It just seems a bit complex and administratively cumbersome.
I was on the finance committee about 35 years ago, and I've been on the committee to appoint a number of years since. My understanding of the process was that the committee to appoint is just non-political. The Board of Selectmen, working with the Finance Committee, would wind up with people who think alike. It's human nature. Or if you're reliant upon the Board of Selectmen to reappoint you, you know, it's just not, a level of independence, or wouldn't look to be, wouldn't have that transparency of being an independent body. So having a group of people who meet once a year, theoretically, once a year for a couple of hours and then go away, at least the original appointments are made without anybody looking for a political viewpoint.
Yeah.
So
I
it
mean,
was
I
that
guess,
area.
yeah, I guess, you know, what I would question is the finance committee is not really a board that, or a committee that is actually making any decisions. We're really just listening and making recommendations that ultimately the town makes a decision on. So I'm not sure about the political aspect of that, but I guess it could happen, you know, the way you're
Well,
saying.
if you had a rebel on your committee,
Mhm.
and that rebel had to go back before the Board of Selectmen to get reappointed,
Mhm.
that's, you know, difficult. It's difficult. I mean, I know it's a hypothetical thing, and I think most people, I think most people come to the same decisions anyway, because you're all getting the same information, all are reasonable people, and most of the time, the conclusions will be alike. But it's just, your group is an independent group, looking at what these other boards, elected or appointed,
Mhm.
are throwing at you, and it's your place to look at them and independently say whether you agree or not.
Mhm.
So I just like that, not being accountable to somebody to reappoint you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr.
a
Dupree.
comment from the floor. I'm just a little confused. In reading through Article 12, you keep saying that the board is 9 members.
It's 12, right? There's 3
12.
ex officio.
Right. So
Yeah,
the
I didn't
quorum
get
should
into that.
actually be 7, not 5.
Yeah. As far as I know, it's never
I
been
mean, this-
practiced that the selectmen participate on the committee. Elton, I don't know if your time that was ever the case, but
Yeah, I mean, in going back to bylaws,
yeah.
I mean, this, in my opinion, the entire bylaw to 12 needs to be
Are you
rewritten.
trying to sink us?
I'm trying to get, because right now, if you have a person missing from your meeting, you don't have a quorum.
We have that problem with just having the 7 members, and it sounds like you're making it more difficult.
No.
No, it does.
That's why I didn't want to
Lower
get
the
into
number,
it.
is what I'm saying.
I
Lower
think
the number
this-
in the new bylaw.
Well, I
Now-
think this makes a very good point, that in fact, our bylaws are flawed.
Thank you.
They need to be updated. We need to take a good look. I mean, we have we have people on a bylaw committee. We have recommendations from a law firm to bring us into compliance. We have to look at all the facets. We have to look at what our reality is. I mean, we can have an ideal, but we have to look at our reality and tighten it up so we are in compliance with our own rules. And that's our ultimate goal here.
Yeah, and if I may, excuse me, just to echo what John had said, is that was one reason why when we looked at a proposed bylaw back in the spring, we actually were taking the Board of Selectmen out. Because to your concern, Marion, about having potential politics involved, is that by not having the Board of Selectmen even sitting as ex officio members, we're hoping to be able to take that out. And I do think that that's something we should seriously look at. And I'm also, from a transparency standpoint, I am concerned because through the years, all of the applications went to one person as the moderator. Quite frankly, we had no idea how many went there, whether it was for your committee or for the finance committee. And even if somebody were to do a Public Records Act, and I'm not asking someone to do that, he's the only person that would have the information. And so, so my point is that although we have to look at this, and I think we all have to work together on it to find a viable solution, if transparency really is key, which I think it has to be, that's one of the reasons why we had proposed that the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town moderator working in consult in a meeting on camera with minutes, and then you can see every application that comes in, be able to appoint a finance committee at that point, and therefore, whether or not somebody may be, if you're concerned about politics, I get it. But at the same time, all of those people are directly accountable to the people through their elected office. So if they're playing games, they potentially don't get reelected. And so I'm not saying that that's the only answer, and there certainly could be other options as well. But I do know this. And in the 21st century, I can't think that we should have one person receiving all the applications, making a decision that's not on camera, has no minutes as to what that person is doing, and we have no idea how many applications that person is receiving. I just think that we have to fix that somehow. And I'm open to anything because I'll work with everyone. Obviously, the board's going to make the final decision to bring it to town meeting. But as you had said, Cheryl, the system's flawed, and I think we all have to, ground one is, can we all recognize it? And if so, can we all work together to fix it?
I mean, it feels like everybody agrees that there's a problem. I'm just wondering, how do you sort of go about this? Do we meet and talk about options? Do we look at what other towns do in terms of how they appoint their finance committees and, just look at all the options before a recommendation is made? Is that kind of how it would work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the right thing to do is I would want to work with Meredith as chair of the finance committee. I'd like to work with some of the members of the subcommittee as well, because you have always historically been involved in that process, and be able to get together, come up with some ideas. Truthfully, we may not all end up agreeing, so probably present a couple of options to the bylaw study committee, because it wouldn't go to the selectmen first. We now have a working bylaw study committee, and allow them to be able to answer questions and parse through it, and then they would make a presentation then and a recommendation to the selectmen at that point come springtime.
Excellent.
Makes sense. It's a good plan.
That's
Go ahead,
one
Amy.
bylaw. We probably have many that need to be
That is correct.
I just wanted to make a comment to what Meredith said about terms for some of you finance committee members, that your terms might be ending or whatever before we get this all squared away. If your term ends before we get anything else in place to reappoint, you're actually considered a holdover, and you can stay in that position as a holdover until a suitable replacement has been appointed, or until you reappointed yourself. So the worry of my
Being
term
invalid.
my term is up and I'm not on the, now there's 6 members of that's the considered, is that you're a holdover, and you can hold that position until a suitable replacement or reappointment has been made.
Okay, that's good news. So no one can leave.
Can I ask a question? So for 9 members, the quorum is 5, and for 7 members, the quorum is?
No, 4.
The quorum is.
If you have a,
12 members, the quorum is 7.
Correct.
Forget the ex officio. Let's just for the sake of talking about the bylaw change, a possible change. So if it was 9, it's 5. If it's 7,
It's 4.
it's 4.
It's true, it's not.
Seems
So it
if you have 9
seems-
members, you have more members to choose from to meet your
Exactly.
quorum.
Yeah, that's what
I see how the raising the requirement is an issue.
Yeah, that just for the sake of, if we were to look at changing a bylaw, to me, if you have 9 members, you have a better chance of meeting a quorum of 5 than you do with 7 meeting a quorum of 4.
No, you're absolutely correct. The problem is, I think,
can't
years
find
of
nine.
experience. You can't get 9 people. I mean, look, it's not just a finance committee. We have lots of other committees that don't have have plenty of vacancies. In fact, the subcommittee, where you only have 5, you only have 4 members because somebody already resigned from it. You have a vacancy, even though it's non-existent, but you have a vacancy. So we have that all over the place in town. And so you're absolutely correct that with 9, it should be easier to get to a quorum, but history as a guide has showed is that they haven't been able to actually field 9, and even if they could get close to 9, not everybody is making it because they are meeting sometimes 2 to 3 times a week in the middle of the spring, and people just have other commitments. Go
I
ahead.
think keeping in mind that we're a recommending body only.
Right.
You know, it isn't as though we're instituting the law by the vote or something, just recommendations.
Right, I was on finance committee, I think,
Yeah.
6 or 7 years, and I only recall one meeting when we could not reach a quorum.
Oh, I can remember several.
We've had some recently.
Yeah.
Yes,
I was
when
on-
we were on together, I
I
can
was
think of
on
several.
I was on a little longer before you.
Right,
Right.
that's true.
And I think I can recall the meeting when we didn't reach a quorum, and that's the only one I can recall, because we couldn't vote on anything. We could talk.
Right.
but we couldn't vote on anything.
All right, Mrs. Raleigh, answer.
Yes, I'm a newbie on the committee. I've only been to one meeting. And I might say at that meeting, we voted unanimously to keep it at 9, and Mr. Benson was present, and we voted immediately to keep the committee. I just feel transparency is very important. And I really feel that committee is aware of transparency over and above the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. One other fact I'd like to say, I've been very impressed lately I go to town meeting all the time. We've got a lot of people standing up and asking a lot of questions. Now, as far as this committee, they were having trouble finding a quorum. Now, it was a one-on-one invitation, so to speak. What did you put your name in? And the only way I see these people being recruited is through the website. And I really feel that people on a one-to-one basis, we've got very active finance committee, which I respect, and you should certainly have your quorum. But there are a lot of people out there that just are not ready unless they realize what they're getting into in a personal invitation. And I don't think the website's doing it.
Yeah.
If you would like me to, I could send out through our clerk association and find out numbers of finance committees, the different towns, how many they have on their.
Yeah, based on population.
Right,
That would be
right.
interesting
And I
to
could
know.
reach out to towns that have close to the same population as we do and see how many members they have
That would be helpful to
on
have.
the board. And maybe that will help us going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just an FYI, I spoke to 3 former moderators, Marion Leonard, Eric Benson, and Warren Turner, and they all agreed that the committee to elect the finance committee should remain, and that the people on the finance committee should be 9.
I'm very excited to hear that you want to keep it at 9. I can't wait to see the huge population that shows up at our next meeting.
I tell you, we can't appoint wait right now. Nothing's gonna happen until next town meeting, so you have from now till then to find more members.
Get us some
If we
people,
don't
we'll
find
take
them,
them.
I think that's the answer.
Absolutely.
You know, just speaking from my personal experience, I think maybe what some of the residents might need to get beyond is intimidation of joining the finance committee, because I don't know a lot about finances. And I don't think we necessarily need people who are finance majors to be on the finance committee. You all have experience and can, I don't want to use, well, it's the only word I can think of right now, tutor them along the way with the different terminology and the acronyms that can be confusing. For the first year, I think it took, even with my background and an accounting degree, I was still lost in municipal finance for the first year.
It's a different.
And
finance is
Government,
much different.
municipal.
it's very different. And Bob Smith was our chairperson at the time, and he was a wealth of information. And he was very knowledgeable of everything that was occurring in town. Many times we didn't know some of the things that were occurring that he brought to our attention, what was happening with the planning board or different commissions or committees. So Bob was a huge source of information and provided that level of education that by the second year I had a better feeling walking in the door. But I can tell you, the first few meetings, I walked out saying, boy, I wasn't ready for this. I'm in way too deep. So I think if maybe some residents feel, if they have an interest and are encouraged and told, you don't need to be a math wizard.
Maybe we should call it the budget review committee. People probably be banging down the door.
The budget. Oh, you might just have that. But if the committee to elect the finance committee, over the course of the next couple months, if they know residents who might be interested, it's the best way to learn about the happenings in the town and to contribute to the town. And you're making recommendations. No one has to feel like they're making the decision. It's the town that makes the decision. You're making the recommendation.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, we could do that, but it's where they are next June, not right now.
Well-
Because we could get them all excited now, but unfortunately, it seems that we can't appoint them.
Right, well, we have to get beyond that.
Yep.
That
I
is
know,
a-
but we have to start getting them all excited to apply come
Yeah.
next town meeting
Mhm.
by that time.
So next steps, David, you said you would meet with the finance committee and the subcommittee, correct? To
Yes.
gain more input. You'll be drafting the bylaw?
Well, I think we need to draft in tandem, but yes. And then we'll submit it off to the bylaw study committee. And I just want to make sure that we have a consensus in the room, it sounds like we do, that our existing finance committee is the finance committee that we're going to stay with, because we need to have one. And so we have to all, I'm hoping, honor all the people that are there now and allow us to allow them to do their job. And then next June, we'll take the issue on at town meeting.
All right, sounds good. Any last comments? All right, thank you all for coming in tonight. All right, anything else before we go into executive session?
I have none.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session, not to return to open session, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, specifically the Norfolk and Dedham Group versus the town of West Bridgewater, since, in my opinion as chair, strategizing in open session would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town. I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Ferrari, yes.
Raise, yes.
Kinahan, yes.
John did.
What's that?